All right, you guys, we are going to find our place. We're just about time. Tonight we have Mason leading the Bible study, okay? So you guys, all of those times that you would like to harass me during, Katie, I'm looking at you, during the Bible study, this is your night to actually do it, okay?
Probably should have set up before it got announced, but that's okay. Hmm? Yeah, 10. 10, maybe 11 in a bit. Okay, yes, a QR code if you would need it. I think they're also on the tables, right? Awesome sauce. Okay. Oh, let's see here. Okay, all right. And I think we're going to start with some prayer. All right. God, I think for this day that we've had, it's been good for the earth, maybe not so good for us who had to work outside. I pray that our discussion and our thought is led by you and glorifying to you. And if there's one thing that we can get out of this, it is how do we farther your kingdom through knowledge of your word. Amen. All right, so we're going to be in Joshua 10 today. And so just like a quick little recap of where we left off in Joshua 9. I wasn't here, so I'm assuming that Drew went over Joshua 9. Hold on one second. Excuse me. So Joshua 9. So at the very end of it, you have the Gibeonites who deceived Joshua into joining into a covenant with them. Joshua didn't pray to God. He didn't consult God. So he definitely should not have been entering into a covenant in the first place. And then even more than that, joining into a covenant without God's permission, without consulting him. And so now that the Gibeonites are, I don't know the technical word for it, in leagues maybe with Jerusalem. Let's see. The Adonai-Zedek king of Jerusalem heard how Joshua captured Ai and had devoted it to its destruction, doing to Ai and its king as he had done to Jericho and its king. The inhabitants of Gibeon had now made peace with Israel and among them. Essentially, because Gibeon was considered a great city, close to one of a royal city, it had lots of warriors. Its people were trained. They were formidable. And so now the Israelites they had essentially, it's like an upset, right, in sports. They from earthly means, they were not supposed to win the fights that they did. They were outnumbered, they had bad positioning, anything that you want to call it, but they did. And so now they have this, maybe from an outside perspective, they have what is a tremendous amount of luck, and now they have genuine warriors behind them. So the Adonai-Zedek, this is at least as far as I understand, this is a self-given title. This isn't something that his people named him or his mother named him. This is a entirely prideful title, and it translates to the Lord of Righteousness. Very pretentious in nature, and we can essentially, why do I say essentially so much? Reset. We can guess that this is a prefigure or foreshadowing to his character. The King of Jerusalem is another title, one that echoes another King of Jerusalem, Melchizedek. His name, according to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 2, is translated King of Righteousness. So, it appears as such that Adonai-Zedek is trying to take Melchizedek's place, even though he has this aversion and hatred for the people of God. So, in Joshua chapter 10, verses 3 through 4. So Adonai-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, sent to Hoham, king of Hebron, and Piram, king of Jarmuth, and Japhia, king of Lachish, and Debir, king of Eglon, saying, "Come up to me and help me, and let us strike Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the people of Israel." Now the Gibeonites had been a part of this kind of society of kingdoms, kind of like a you help me, I help you situation. So not only did they join a worrisome nation from their point of view, they went against their agreement. So they were traitors, is what the Gibeonites were. And if they allowed one nation to turn on them and traitor them, that would be a very slippery slope for others to do the same. So they had to try to make an example out of them, is what they're trying to do. So in chapter 10, verse 5, then the 5 king of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, gathered their forces and went up with their armies and encamped against Gibeon and made war against it. So the Gibeons, now at war with their former allies, send to Joshua. It says in Joshua chapter 10, verse 6, "And the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp in Gilgal, saying, 'Do not relax your hand from your servants. Come up to us quickly, save us, and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites who dwell in the hill country are gathered against us.'" Now, there's a bit of a funny thing that could be pointed out here, because when the Gibeonites had deceived Joshua, I'm trying to remember. I'm not going to be able to quote it. I'm not that studious. But essentially, they put on their old shoes. They put on their old saddles on their horses. They made it look like they were travelers from a great, great distance, right? And so whenever they're trying to enlist Israel's help, or maybe their covenant, they're making it look like they're nobody, right? They're of no threat to the Israelites, where actually they're like next door neighbors. It'd be like Monongahela and Preston County, just right there. And so it'd be kind of funny if Joshua's just like, "No, it's going to take us a while to get there. We're from this super far off place. You guys have fun until we get there." But really, it was just like a night's walk away. And so that's what they did. Joshua chapter 10, verses 7 and 8. So Joshua, I totally skipped over this part. So even though my goodness. Sorry, I cough a lot when I'm nervous. So Joshua, even though he had entered in this covenant that was not God-blessed, right? God didn't necessarily want them to enter into this promise with this nation that wasn't God's chosen people. But rather than to go back on his word, Joshua chose to go and honor his word, trusting that God would redeem, even though it was his mistake, that God would redeem it and use it for his betterment. So that's what he did. In Joshua 10, 7 and 8, "So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, 'Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you.'" Now we can see how God has started to redeem Joshua's mistake here, because it was Joshua's mission to take over these 5 kings. Now his plan was to kind of do it one by one. It's kind of hard to conquer 5 at one unless you have God on your side, but God has helped him out here. And he's putting all of these nations that are going to stand against Israel into one place. And got a note here. They gathered themselves nicely for Joshua. Chapter 10, verse 9. So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal. So, again, he is going above and beyond his word. He's not like, okay, we'll wait till the next day where we can get fully prepared and we can get there, and maybe we'll get there by like afternoon and be able to help you. No, they're going at the moment they get the news. Chapter 10, verse 10. And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel. This is all the kings who are gathered there. Into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon, and chased them all the way to the ascent of Beth Horon, and struck them as far as Azekah and Makkedah. Totally should have looked up these pronunciations. Sorry. This is known as the Battle of Beth Horon. Verse 11. And as they fled before Israel, while they were going down the ascent of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel who killed with the sword. Than the sons of Israel killed with the sword. Now, it's a very interesting thing that this is saying, right? It's killed more than the Israelites killed with the sword, right? And so, what can we take from that? There is, by all means, from a worldly perspective, somebody who's reading this if you were to read this not knowing it was from the Bible and it's just a historical account, first of all, your first thought is that's ridiculous. What, like hailstones are coming down and killing all the people that are being chased and not a single one is going to kill the people who are chasing? It's not possible. And then secondly, this is just farther going to show how God is not only redeeming Joshua's mistake, but is also taking it a step farther and saying that I'm going to make it even easier for you to do the right thing. Because, where was it? The Israelites had gotten a great victory and then didn't give the credit to the glory to God, which probably happened a few times. I can't remember exactly. But he's making it easier on them because the Israelites can't control meteorites. They can't do stuff like that. The only explanation for this is that it was a work of God. And it's interesting. This is a foreshadowing to Revelations. And first of all, how cool is that? I don't know exactly when Joshua was written. It's a long time before Revelations was written. But Revelations 16:21, essentially the synopsis of it is, when the kings of earth blaspheme and hailstones come from heaven. You have these 5 kings who are blaspheming God by attacking and making enemies of the Israelites. And what happens? Hailstones come from the heavens. Now if we look at verse 12, it can at first glance it looks like a troublesome verse. A verse that maybe we would just want to skip over and pretend it doesn't exist. But Joshua 10:12 says, At that time, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, so essentially as Israel is standing witness to what he's saying, he says, Sun, stand still at Gibeon and moon in the valley of Aijalon. In Hebrew, this translates quite literally to be silent. Cease, to be cut off, put to silence. Joshua 10:13. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jashar? The sun stopped in the midst of heaven and did not hurry to set about a whole day. initially, if you're reading that without really looking into the other scriptures surrounding it, or really just the Bible as a whole, it can almost seem like God is taking orders from Joshua, right? Like Joshua is saying, like, God, do this. But at least in my reading of it, in my understanding of it, it is God is wanting what's best for us, right? I think a lot. I worked at a summer camp in California last summer. I had all ages over the 10 weeks that I was there. It was ridiculous. Not ridiculous, it was great. But I had, like, 1 week I'd have 8-year-olds, a whole cabin, 10 8-year-olds. And then 1 week you had high schoolers. And the conversation difference between 8-year-olds and high schoolers is just ridiculous. But it's so much fun. Just a quick side fact before I get into the actual meat and potatoes. The coolest question I was asked that whole summer, it was the youngest class I ever had, or youngest cabin I ever had. It was the 6-year-olds. And at the very beginning, I want to get to know them as fast as possible, and they get to know me. That way I can be more trusted by them, right? And so I'm like, okay, you can ask me any question that you want. In these 15 minutes before bed, you can ask me any question you want, and I will answer it. This little kid asked me, why don't they make Western movies where the cowboy rides a dinosaur? And I was like, I don't know. That is the coolest thing I have ever heard. But I was more meaning questions about me. But anyway, most fun thing ever. But exactly, it'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm going to write an email to Jurassic Park. But anyway, a lot of the times, whenever I'm explaining the kind of difference of God's plan versus our plan, I like to put it to the comparison of my little brother. I have a 6-year-old brother. And it seems like everything in his life, from school that he does with mom, to video games, to his relationship with me and the rest of his family, is just obstacles in the way of getting candy. Halloween is his favorite day of the entire year. And if he had his way, right, he would eat everything that he got that night. But he would feel terrible afterwards, right? But he can't understand that. So from his perspective, that's what would be best for him. But from my perspective, I know that that's not, that moderation is good. And so in the same way where I have much more life experience than him, I have a larger perspective than him, it is that and infinitely more so in our relationship to God. He knows infinitely more than us. And so it is less that Joshua is commanding God, and more that this was already in God's plan. But if my brother, at 6 years old, asked, instead of eating all of his Halloween candy, asked to, brother, can I only have 3 pieces tonight? Then, yeah, of course you can have 3 pieces. Like, that is a great plan. Let's do that. And so, even though that was already my plan, he voiced it first. So it's not he's telling me that he's going to have 3 pieces. He's putting that out there, but that is my plan for him, and that is good. So at least that's what I'm understanding whenever I'm reading this. But the nice thing is that sometimes things can be up to interpretation. That's why we have different denominations. There are lots of notes here that I didn't entirely understand, if I'm being honest. But so I'm going to skip to the book of Jashar. We could cut out the whispering. Yes.
It's a lost book in the Bible.
No, I'm just making fun of you. I'm just making fun of you. I should have spoke up. Let's stop whispering, everybody.
I said, poor Mason, he's reading my notes. He's asking me, what were you thinking during this?
Yeah. I'm sure it makes perfect sense to you, but it's okay. Sorry, that came out like a jab. It wasn't meant to be. The book of Jashar. So, like Pastor Drew just said, the book of Jashar is a lost book of the Old Testament. It is essentially a collection of stories, of poems, what would essentially be, if you've ever read, like, the Great American Storybook. There's no centralized story. It's a collection, like you have Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed, all of that stuff, which there's probably, Paul Bunyan probably wasn't real, but there's a grain of truth to it. But in this way, it is a recollection and a telling of Israel's great military victories and heroes. It's referenced 3 times in the Old Testament. You have Joshua 10, 2 Samuel chapter 1, and possibly in 1 Kings chapter 8. Excuse me. And it is always mentioned in connection with extraordinary moments worth memorializing in verse. And so whenever Joshua commands the sun to stand still, and the text says, "Is this not written in the book of Jashar?" It's the biblical author essentially saying that this miracle was so significant that this is written down in Israelite folklore. Like this is skipping straight to the top of storytelling, of sitting around a campfire, right? Now, unfortunately, the book itself is lost to history, but the fact that Joshua is referencing this book is actually it's a check mark for its viability, because if you're going to reference, if you're referencing a false story, you're going to reference a false book to support that story. And so the fact that he's referencing something that was very, very known among the people, it'd be like, I don't know, if I wanted to reference Percy Jackson or something like that. Like, at least that's something that all of my generation knows. Actually wore out all the spines on my books. But that there were ancient writers didn't typically invent citations to books their readers could go check. So now to Joshua verse 14. There has been no day like it before or since, when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. Hailstones on the enemy, like that whenever it's saying, raining down the people running away. This was an answer to prayer, but the request was anticipated by God, right? He knows everything. He is outside of time. And prayer is God's way of enlisting you into what he's doing.
So Mason, this is a good, that point there is think about it. Right?
You want a mic?
Go for it. If you think about it, okay, so hailstones, and this word in Hebrew is eben, which means stones. This isn't ice. This isn't weather related. Mm-hmm. So these stones that are falling are coming from atmosphere, mm-hmm. right? We would call them meteorites,
which would be skies, like yes. Stuff that's beyond their understanding and reach.
So if these are meteorites, how long do they have to be in motion until they arrive in this spot, right? And what does that tell us about the timing of God? And mm-hmm. just, when it speaks of anticipating, that God knew this moment, and he knew this prayer was going to be coming, and mm-hmm. he had already anticipated the prayer and had made a way for it potentially years ahead of time.
Yeah.
And set this in motion.
I mean, assumedly, it'd be since the beginning of creation. I mean, at least as far as we know, space is very well and infinite. So I'd like to say since the beginning of the creation. I think that just makes it cooler. So Joshua 10:15 through 16. Then Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal. These 5 kings fled and hid themselves in the cave at Makkedah. Also, this is another reference to Revelations again. The kings hide in caves. Joshua 10:17 through 18. And it was told to Joshua, the 5 kings have been found hidden in the cave at Makkedah. And Joshua said to them, roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and set men by to guard them. Now, this is, at least the way that I'm understanding, almost like a slap in the face to the kings. They've already retreated. Their men are long by gone. And this is essentially just an opportunity for Joshua to kind of gather and get a breath before having to deal with these guys. They're just stuck, and they know their demise is coming eventually. Joshua 19 through 24. But do not stay there yourselves. Pursue your enemies, attack their rear guard. Do not let them enter their cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand. When Joshua and the sons of Israel had finished striking at them with a great blow until they were wiped out, and when the remnant that remained of them had entered into the fortified cities, all the people returned safe to Joshua in the camp at Makkedah. Not one man moved his tongue against any of the people of Israel. Then Joshua said, "Open the mouth of the cave, and bring those 5 kings out from me to the cave. And bring the 5..." Yeah, I said that right. And they did so, and brought those 5 kings out from him of the cave: the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. And when they brought those kings out to Joshua, Joshua summoned all the men of Israel and said to the chiefs of the men of war who had gone with him, "Come near, put your feet on the necks of these kings." Then they came near and put their feet on their necks. There are a couple references inside of the Bible of just the cultural significance of this. I mean, it's already pretty significant. I mean, if you're standing on somebody's neck, that person is no means has anything left to fight with. But it's even farther than that. It is, oh my goodness, I'm completely blanking. I even looked up this whole Google thing about, it was like an early, no, I'm thinking of a different thing. Scratch that completely. I was thinking of something completely different. But in Romans 16:20, we have another reference to the foot on the neck as being a sign of victory and complete and total domination over the other party. Joshua chapter 10, verse 25. And Joshua said to them, "Do not be afraid or dismayed. Be strong and courageous. For thus the Lord will do to all your enemies against whom you fight." For thus the Lord will do to all your enemies against whom you fight. This really applies to us as we would know it today. Joshua was fighting as a man of God, and even though he made mistakes, as we do, God still redeemed his decisions afterward. Joshua didn't make the mistake and then try to rectify it of his own means. He made the mistake, recognized that he made the mistake, and then went fully to God for the answer on how to fix it. So the Lord's enemies are his footstool. Through him we can claim victory and put our feet on the necks of the enemies. Romans 6:20. Then now to 26 through 28 in Joshua 10. And afterwards Joshua struck them and put them to death, this being the 5 kings. And he hanged them on 5 trees. They hung on the trees until evening. But at the time of the going down of the sun, Joshua commanded, and he took them down from the trees and threw them into the cave where they had hidden themselves. And they set large stones against the mouth of the cave, which remain to this very day. As for Makkedah, Joshua captured it on that day and struck it, and its king with the edge of the sword. He devoted to destruction every person in it. He left none remaining. And he did to the king of Makkedah just as he had done to the king of Jericho. There are no half measures here, and there are no half measures when it comes to following God's instructions. The actions are ruthless and brutal. But it's also not for us to, first of all, it's a different time period. These are different peoples that it is written to than is us reading it. But it's not for us to judge the harshness of God's will and God's instruction. In Joshua 9 and 10, we should both be warned and encouraged. There is an alertness that we need to have as Christians. There is no such thing as an idle faith or a lukewarm Christian. I think that's in Matthew. We must be alert and prayerful because, call it what it is very easy to be deceived. The devil loves to get his foot in the door. He's not going to come at you like with sirens and noisemakers and everything like that. He's not going to come at you head on. It's always going to be from the side. We got to be careful about that. And it would just be foolish to say that we can avoid that entirely. It's not realistic. But what is realistic is that we can recognize when we do wrong. I mean, even my little brother hit me really hard the other week. And he recognized that he did wrong. Now, we were playing, so I had to get my get back. But he recognized that he did wrong and tried to run to Mom for help. But we can recognize when we do wrong as Christians. And instead of trying to rectify that on our own doing, it's just easier to just give it to God. He's going to come up with a solution that's much better than ours. Because often enough, especially whenever I was a kid and I made a mistake and I tried to fix it on my own, it really just led to it getting worse and worse. 1 John chapter 5, verse 4. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, this being our faith. There's no means of, whether it be its strength, influence, power, money, anything that you're going to have today or tomorrow that is going to allow you to overcome the world's influence. It is only your faith in Jesus. That's only your faith in Jesus that's going to do this. So now, moving on. Excuse me. So now moving on to Joshua 10, verses 29 through 32. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him had passed on from Makkedah to Libnah and fought against Libnah. And the Lord gave it also and its king into the hand of Israel, and he struck it with the edge of his sword, and every person in it. He left none remaining in it. He did to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him passed on from Libnah to Lachish and laid siege to it and fought against it. And the Lord gave Lachish into the hand of Israel, and he captured it on the second day and struck it with the edge of the sword and every person in it, as he had done to Libnah. There was a standard for Israel's victory here. There's a standard that God, English is failing me. There's a standard that God is expecting here to follow his commands to completeness, and that is what this is, a complete and utter victory. Lachish took 2 days. When Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fenced cities of Judah, and he personally laid siege against Lachish, he had to abandon his attempt to reduce it. And later, when Nebuchadnezzar invaded Judah, is that the same as Nebuchadnezzar, or is that a different name? Okay, Nebuchadnezzar. I don't know if I could have pictured the spelling of his name. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar invaded Judah in the reign of its last king. Lachish was one of the last to be conquered. So Lachish is this is like, well, we don't really have any like great wartime cities anymore. This would be like the kind of societal influence that, like, I don't know, Rome at the height of its power would have had. Like, completely and utterly decimated the attacks against it. It is a strong, tall city. And yet it fell in 2 days to the Israelites with God behind them. Joshua 10, 33 through 40. I'm going to get a drink of water before this. Then Horam, king of Gezer, came up to help Lachish, And Joshua struck him and his people until he left none remaining. Then Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Lachish to Eglon. They laid siege to it and found against it. And they captured it on that day and struck it with the edge of the sword. And every person in it he devoted to destruction that day, as he had done to Lachish. Then Joshua and all Israel with him went up from Eglon to Hebron, and they fought against it and captured it and struck it with the edge of the sword, and its kings and its towns and every person in it. He left none remaining, as he had done to Eglon, and devoted it to its destruction and every person in it. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him turned back to Debir and fought against it. He captured it with its kings and all its towns, and they struck them with the edge of the sword and devoted to destruction every person in it. He left none remaining, just as he had done to Hebron and Libnah and its king, so he did to Debir and its king. And so Joshua struck the whole land, the hill country and the Negeb, and the lowland and the slopes, and all their kings. He left nothing remaining, but devoted to destruction and all that breathed, just as the Lord God of Israel had commanded. It's difficult to read, as is any death, even though that we know that this death is justified by God, which means that it's justified for us, but it can be hard to understand. And ultimately, at least at where I'm at right now, I might not understand it right now, but I can still have faith in God and knowing that my understanding doesn't determine the goodness of his will. But this, again, just goes to show how God redeemed Joshua's mistake, right? Instead of having to conquer these cities at their peak, they had sent out their best fighting men and were struck down, right, by the power of God. And so now they are vastly, vastly weakened. So, obviously, with God behind them, Israelite would have won and survived and would have done it. But God's power is made clear through this. Joshua 10:41. Joshua struck them from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza in the country of Goshen, just as far as Gibeon. And so here, at the site of failure of faith 40 years earlier, when Joshua and Caleb had encouraged them to enter the land, but they decided not to and wandered aimlessly the desert for 40 years, or 40 years in the wilderness. So Joshua chapter 10, 42 and 43. Joshua captured all these kings and their land at one time, because the Lord God of Israel fought for Israel. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal, a return base a return base. This base camp is Golgotha, which is where Christ was crucified, or would come to be crucified. There is, I don't know how I skipped over it earlier. I put a note in here, but back whenever there were lots of, I'll scroll back. You guys don't have to go back. But back where it's talking about the cross references to Revelations, right? And then yes, here we go. Joshua 10:13. And the sun stood still and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. It's not written in the book of Jashar. The sun stopped in the midst of heaven and it did not hurry to set about for a whole day. Whenever I read this, one of my favorite things about the Bible is whenever there is undeniable evidence from outside of the Bible and other historical evidences that support it. That is like the coolest thing to me, right? Because I know the Bible to be true. But I have friends who think much more scientifically, and if it's not like 100% scientific, then I don't believe it, right? And so this reminded me, because the sun stood still, right? I think whenever I read that, I thought of Jesus' crucifixion, right? And I actually found it. So the Chinese, right, they are, and for thousands, I don't even know exactly how long. They've been around for a long time. They are absolutely great at record keeping. And so they write down like everything, and they have their own names for stuff. But I found this like excerpt, I don't know, might be the word for it. So I'll just read it. These aren't my words. But this is I'll just read it, and I'll talk more afterwards. So, yet perhaps the most astonishing intersection of history and astronomy comes from a different chapter of the Chinese annals. In 31 AD, and by the way, Jesus was believed to be crucified from 30 to 33 AD. We don't know exactly. There are a couple people who will say it's like on the 7th of April exactly, but there's no way of truly knowing. But in 31 AD, at the very moment the New Testament describes the crucifixion of Jesus, an event marked by a sudden darkening of the sky, Chinese astronomers recorded a celestial anomaly of their own. The Eastern Han Astronomical Annals state, quote, yin and yang have mistakenly switched, which is essentially night and day, have mistakenly switched, and the sun and moon were eclipsed, describing a sudden atmospheric darkening during daylight. And even more striking, an imperial proclamation by Emperor Guangwu declared, quote, the sins of all the people are now on one man, and the manuscript uniquely quotes, the man from heaven dies. Now this is a country not at all connected until Marco Polo kind of like, was it Marco Polo's Journey to China? I was homeschooled, so my mom has songs for everything. But if that is not undeniable evidence from two completely different cultures, the same exact time period, in something that does not just happen. It's so cool. I had so much fun with that. But yeah, little side note, that is my addition to this. But I think there are takeaways to everything. And the neat thing about the Bible is that it's going to speak to you differently than it's going to speak to me. And that is, to me, the most beautiful thing about groups like this, because I can have a discussion. I can say that this is how this spoke to me, and this is how I read it. And then you can read it differently, and you can tell me how it spoke to you. I can be like, that is just so cool. Like, because I truly believe that even though the words of the Bible don't change, they don't change whenever I open up the book tomorrow, it is so infinitely complex that even just the very experiences that I have day to day will so deeply change the way that I will read this, that this book, that I have not had I've had the opportunity, I haven't done it yet, that I have not read 100% through, but that when I do, I can come back in a year, 5 years, 10 years, and it's like I'm reading again for the first time. That I'm still recognizing, it's still saying the same things, but it's going to be so different, right? So, walk by faith, not by sight. Joshua should have done this whenever he met the Gibeonites, even though he didn't know they were the Gibeonites. Instead of relying on just what he saw, right? He should have gone to God. And be cautious about alliances. I think that this prescribes a bit more to the Israelites than it does to us. Because, what verse? There are a couple verses. They're linked up there somewhere that I probably should have touched on. But the Israelites are told not to enter into covenants with other nations and other peoples because they are solely for God. But we are called, as now Christians with the Holy Spirit inside of us, we are called to be, I have it here somewhere, fishers of men. This was the first thing I ever made. I got like a little jewelry set whenever I was like 14. So I put a fisher's hook on a cross. And I still think it's like the coolest thing ever. But we're called to be fishers of men. Now there's a difference between a covenant. I I can't promise to do something that I can't do. But I can promise to the best of my ability to love someone. I can promise to the best of my ability to be there for somebody. And then the most important part of it is that God will take our blunders, or can, and take our blunders and turn them into victories for his kingdom. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have messed up. And probably the coolest thing in my life, and I mean, I'm only 19 years, I turned 20 in like 30 days, something like that. So I'm not like a young 19, I'm an old 19. But even in just my 19 years of life, I can look back and see how God was at work in the craziest things. And even like, it's a long story. You can ask me about it. I'd probably be talking long past 7:30 if I went into it now. But long story short, the entire reason I ended up, because I never planned on going to college, but the entire reason I went to college is because a girl broke up with me whenever I was 16, and then I was so heartbroken that I needed to go to youth group. And then that led me to NYC, which led me to get a scholarship to go to Olivet, and so I went on a visit and realized that God was calling me to ministry. And that was a 2 years difference and a lot of life in between it. None of it made sense when it was happening, right? It rarely ever does. But we can have faith in God's plan and know that as long as I keep my head on straight as best as I can and look to God, that he's not going to lead me astray. It might not make sense in the moment. There are plenty of things right now that don't make sense to me. And I'm like, I wish I could just grab the reins or grab the pen and keep on writing my own story. But I'm just going to mess it up even farther. So just having faith in God that he's going to use you in ways that you're never going to be able to imagine. And that's the coolest thing to me. I think starting on 11 now? Should I go to 11, Drew? Okay, cool. Admittedly, I barely read over 11, so I'm going to be doing a lot of just reading straight from this. But it's fine. We're going to have lots of fun. Is there a slide for the awesome sauce? Or maybe while I'll add it, I'll just look at any of the notes that I took whenever I was reading it. I kind of covered everything. Do we have any printed out? Oh, yes, we do. 11 and 12. Awesome. Here, if you have some. Who doesn't have an 11 and 12? Oh, it is? Oh, okay. Do you still want paper? There we go. Who wants paper? Okay. Do you want paper? Awesome. Yeah, of course. Sorry, I didn't realize that was for 11 and 12. Of course. Awesome. Okay. Okay. So, now with Joshua, chapters of 11 and 12, they're going to bring us to the completion of this conquest. And the then the eventual division of the land, trading it up between all of the new owners. So in Joshua 11, verses 1 through 2, when Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of this, he sent to Jobab, king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, and to the king of Akshap, and to the kings who are in the northern hill country, in the Arabah, south of Chinneroth, in the lowland, in the Naphoth Dor of the west, Chinneroth. Wait, oh, is that the pronunciation? Kinneret?
It has two different spellings in it.
Oh, interesting.
You may know it as the Kinneret Sea Kinneret, Shinneroth. It's the same word, or it means the same thing.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that, Kinneret, means harp, and was an early name of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias. Joshua 11, verses 3 through 4. The Canaanites in the east and the west, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Jebusites in the hill country, and the Hivites under Hermon in the lake of Mizpah. And they came out with all their troops, a great horde, and number like the sand that is on the seashore, with very many horses and chariots. Sand as the seashore is also referenced in Genesis chapter 22, verse 17, and Genesis 32, verse 12, describes the multitudes as being like the stars in the sky. Now, horses and chariots are also mentioned kind of like towards the beginning of Joshua. They were prohibited. There's no mention of them before. And unless you're unfamiliar with how big a horse is, or especially a war horse, they are tanks. They are the tanks of, well, really everything up until about like 100 years ago. They are behemoths. One time a Clydesdale stepped on my foot whenever I was a kid, and now I have a hugely irrational fear of horses. They like look at you with their like horsey eyes. They creep me out. I could not even imagine a horse like running at you and it's pulling. I don't even know how much a chariot would weigh, but it's quite a lot. But so horses are a status of war, of wealth, of power. But yet they're prohibited to the Israelites. So in Proverbs 21, verse 31, the horse is prepared against the day of battle, but victory belongs to the Lord. There are plenty of references as to where the Israelites won battles over other nations who had these horse tanks. They're just horses, but might as well be tanks. The Battle of the Red Sea, Sihon and Og, in Numbers 21 and 33. Sisera, chariots of iron in Judges, chapter 4. David over Zobah with 1,000 chariots in 2 Samuel chapter 8. Now, I prescribe to this idea that, like, why were they against using or owning horses? It is that in the same way of God with the meteorites, it is taking away that even the slightest possibility of the Israelites saying, like, we won this of our own accord. Like, we're so awesome. No, you're not. You are nothing compared to these armies. The only way that you can win is with God's help. Yes. Oh, look at this. It's even right here. The main battle tank of Israel is the Merkava, which means chariot. So Joshua 11, chapter 11, verse 5. And all these kings joined their forces and came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. Now, according to Josephus, who was a early historical biblical scholar and would be like the N.T. Wright of the early age, or like the C.S. Lewis. Like, everybody knows C.S. Lewis. everybody would know Josephus in this time. According to Josephus, there were about 300,000 soldiers, 10,000 cavalry, and 20,000 chariots. So they have more chariots than cavalry, which is insane. Because usually, or I don't want to say usually, depending, it was either one horse to a chariot or two horses to a war chariot. So 20,000 chariots could very well mean 40,000 horses. Merom is in the Hulev Valley, which is in the plain of Esdraelon, and Tel Megiddo overlooks the plain. I'm just going to go for it, and I think that you guys can get me. Tel means mound, but also refers to mounds due to layers of civilizations. Cities built upon cities, built upon cities, creating an artificial hill. Almost like Venice, essentially. Or is it Boston or New York that are also built on like a swamp that's just trash layered down? Something like that. Creating an artificial hill. Megiddo has approximately 20 layers of previous civilizations, and its location is very strategic and holds a wealth of biblical history. This is where Barak had victory over the Canaanites. Gideon had his victory over the Midianites. It's the site of the death of Saul and Jonathan, death of Amaziah and his defeat, the death of Josiah, which is also called the sunset of the two kingdoms, and the kingdom of Israel. And also in Revelations chapter 16, verse 6, it speaks of the final act of engagement at the end of the 17th week of Daniel. Also, the battle of the 9 kings takes place at Megiddo.
Mason,
Yes.
let me pause you there because I hit that really quickly and then I don't say anything about it.
Okay.
But Megiddo, we know this name. We know this name differently. We would call it Tel Megiddo. That's one way. But another way that you could say this name is Har Megiddo. Har Megiddo. And we know that from its word Armageddon. This is a place of battle. And so Megiddo is this hilly country, but on the field below it are all these historical battles. But eventually, if you go to Revelation 16:6, this is the spot of the final battle. This is when we talk about Armageddon, this is the site that we're speculating Armageddon is going to happen at. And so when you say the word Megiddo, it's Armageddon.
Very cool.
Literally. And so
Okay.
this is the site that it's going to be at. So a lot of famous battles here, but it also holds the most famous battle yet to come.
It's very interesting. Do we know, like, we don't have a map, do we? Like, yeah, like approximately where would this be at? Because, I mean, there's still tons of history from between when this was written and then where we're at now. I'd be very curious to see if even more battles have taken place here. Okay, awesome. You just interrupt me once you get to it. Does that work? Okay. And then there's a list of victories. I'll just kind of skim over it pretty fast. You have Barak over the Canaanites, Gideon over the Midianites, and then you have the disasters. You have the death of Saul and Jonathan, death of Amaziah, death of Josiah, and sunset of kingdoms. So Joshua 11, chapter 11, verse 6. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, for tomorrow at this time I will give over all of them slain to Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire." Again, pretty violent and absolute, right? I mean, hamstringing a horse, that is like, that horse can't do anything now. It can't work a field. It can't pull anything. It probably can't even pull itself. So this is, again, a complete and utter domination over the enemy. A study of these biblical battles, even put into secular terms, Joshua is a phenomenal leader. Like, obviously, he is a leader beneath God. He's not someone who's good enough or crazy enough in whatever way to usurp God. But he is very, very good at strategic warfare. A preemptive offense was very usual. He established a successful style in exploiting speed, stealth, and knowledge of the terrain. I mean, you see, what was it, the two times, like the kings came like out of their fortresses, which is like the last thing that you want to do if you have a fortress. Fortresses are made to stay inside of. But they left these. Now he's going to use, maybe not like his home field, because they don't have like a home country at this point, but he's a lot more familiar with it than they are. He's going to use that to his advantage. This is interesting. Joshua's leadership seems to have laid the foundation for military doctrine venerated at West Point, the Prussian traditions behind the fabled German general staff, and the Israel Defense Forces today. This is funny. It's tragic that they haven't discovered Joshua's most significant military secret. He, quote, he wholly followed the Lord God of Israel, end quote. And then there's lots, let's see, Joshua 14, Numbers 14, Numbers 32, Deuteronomy 1, and Joshua 14. So it says that a lot of times. And then here we have, thou shalt ho? Something like that. What in the world? My computer just jumped to the top of the document. That is so cool. Oh. Okay. I'll go to it. Let's see. Okay, we're jumping back to now. We're looking for, it's the hilly place. Armageddon. Where are we looking here? Oh, yes, here we go. Okay. Melody, would it be, are you able to pull up the document and put that on there? Oh, it's okay. If it's that much work, I have no idea how computers work. I don't want you to do too much. Okay, well, if we get to it, we'll get to it. That's really cool. Okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted.
If you want, Mason, we have enough time, about 11, 12 minutes here, including prayer. It might be a little bit of time for discussion.
Ooh, yeah, totally. Okay. Yeah, let's just read this one. Wait, where are we at? So we're in Joshua's generalship. Okay, yeah, there's still plenty of time before the next one, so yeah, we'll call it there. Yeah. Okay. Any questions for me and or Drew, I guess? Because if I can't answer it, he probably can.
Are you ready for it? It's in Canva if you want to download the Joshua slide presentation again, Pastor Melanie. Yeah, Wednesday night Joshua.
Or I guess I'll do this. I'll do it like how we do it at my college. Each table is going to have to come up with an answer to this. At the very end of 9 and 10, right, we have like the lessons to be learned. The walk by faith, not by sight. Be cautious about alliances, and know that God can take our blunders and turn them into victories. But then I also talked about like how crazy it is and awesome it is that the Bible is interpreted differently by different people. So how about this? Let's do 2 more takeaways that are not from these 3. Takeaways, or we'll start with 1 if you get to 2 or more, but let's start with 1. Just talk amongst yourselves for, we'll do 2.5 minutes, and then, I don't know, I'll start calling on tables, I guess. I don't know. The takeaways from chapters 9 and 10, So like, what did you, as you're listening to this from this week and last week, what is your, if you had to go home, like, I don't know, if you were like a kid in Sunday school and your mom picked you up and you're like, what did you learn today? What did you learn today? Noted. Okay. Okay. Would Tracy like to answer for the other tables as well? Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Ooh, yeah, that's a good idea. Whenever I'll go around with the microphone this time. All right. It was only a minute and a half, but it looks like there's good discussion. All right, Deanne, you've been voluntold. I think. Mm.
That was not after death. We thought AD, like before Christ. Well, me and Aunt Dee, sorry, Uncle Jimmy already knew, but apparently it was liar. It was, yeah, the year of the Lord, and we did not know that, and that was our takeaway.
Hmm. Yeah. No, he does not.
Just as like we finished last week about how, the Gibeonites are pretty deceptive, but, God loves everyone. And no matter how deceptive and how mean you are, God can use you. God can say he loves you. And even here, Joshua says, hey, we're going to come help you. And God is always willing to help you. So, it's a good story.
Mhm. Don't worry, we'll get back to them. We'll get back to them. I think more discussion is needed.
Here is Dave Stanley with his takeaway of last week and this week.
Last week was yard sale, wasn't here. This week, do what God tells you to do. Don't go on your own accord.
Give it to Marilyn.
Okay, I guess I'm speaking from my table.
This is exactly how it happens in college too, by the way.
For me, chapter 10, the thing that spoke to me was that the Gibeonites, even though they were deceptive because they wanted to live, they said that they would honor the God of Israel, and they kept their promise. And God honored them and the Israelites as a result of their devotion to this new God. And I just think that's powerful, that God can take even deception and a mess up on the part of the Israelites disobeying God, and yet God honored both tribes. I just think that's beautiful.
Okay. Man, I keep on getting beat every time. I'm not fast enough. I gotta be faster.
It's kind of the same as the third point in there, but we can't screw up to the point that God can't work something out.
Yeah, never too far gone. All right, we're coming back to you guys. Be ready. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe, catch a tiger by its tail.
I like what the girl in green said.
Okay, I guess I'll
He's
I'll-
bigger than all of our messes, and
Yeah.
like she said, we can't screw up too bad that he can't use us for his glory and his kingdom.
I guess I'll give kind of my takeaway. Miss Christie could second this. I love to connect scriptures to other scriptures. It's like my favorite thing ever. And one of my favorite scriptures of all time, I'll be fast here, I know I'm running low on time. One of my favorite scriptures of all time is 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 9 through 11, I believe it is. It's right after Paul is talking about the thorn in his side that God allowed the devil to give him to keep him humble. But afterwards, because we don't know what it is, whether it was mental or physical, but we do know that it impacted his life in a very real way. And he goes on afterwards to say something to the effect of, I will rejoice in my hardships. I will rejoice in the face of fear, or something like that. Essentially, my takeaway from that is life is going to be hard, but God is always going to bring you back up to this level. And the thing is, with little life struggles, you can be tempted to think that you are the one who's bridging that gap here, but you're not. But in those life struggles where it's like you are like you've hit rock bottom, and God brings you back here, that can only be God. And so with the meteorites from heaven, with the God saying no to the horses, he's giving the Israelites the opportunity to praise him easily, to bring glory to his name easily, than if he had allowed them to do things of their own accord. So, in the way that Paul is rejoicing in his hardship, because you can see God work in your life more through harder situations. God is going to give you the opportunity to bring him praise, and that is our job as his creation, is to bring him glory, bring him praise. And he's not going to make it hard for you to do your number one job. That's my takeaway. All right. We'll end in prayer. Are there any prayer requests that I can take before I pray? All right. God, I thank you for this opportunity in this day to come together as a fellowship of believers, to pursue a deeper understanding of your word, to hear from different perspectives, from different walks of life. Hear how you are impacting them differently, how you're working in their hearts differently. I pray that we can go from this place and remember, hopefully, at least 10% of what was said. And I pray that what we do with the rest of the day, with the rest of this week, with the rest of our lives going forward, is to keep you at the forefront of our decisions, to keep you at the forefront of how we perceive our day-to-day life. To not rely on our own, eyes or something like that it says here. Don't rely on our eyes, but instead rely on our faith of you. I pray this in your mighty name. Amen. Thank you, guys.